The lobbyist smiled. He leaned back in his seat and gazed around the crowded room, taking in the faces. Some were glaring at others, angered by their loss. Others propped their tired heads on arms, indifferent and bored by the day's debates. Still others were smiling. All the grinning faces in the room were worn by those who shared his happy occupation. They were ecstatic with the news that all the money, all the gifts, and all the favors had finally paid off. They had finally put enough coins on one side to tip the balance. Many of these peers sat contented with the knowledge that fracking would remain legal throughout the state, and that their hungry masters would continue to run to them for comfort. He, however, was more concerned with a smaller matter. While larger dogs had fought over the bone that was the fracking bill, he was able to slip by unnoticed to complete his own employer's goal. Few had paid attention to paragraph 8, subsection 6. It was a mere 4 sentences, after all, proposed by a relatively minor congressman. In turn, the lobbyist employers had suddenly become quite passionate about said congressman being reelected. It was a small price to pay, for those 4 sentences guaranteed that the FDA would look the other way if a company chose to omit an ingredient here or there from its soup can labels. The lobbyist caught his new favorite politician's eye among the sea of well-dressed men and winked. They would no longer have to worry about the company going under this year. His smile grew wider as he saw the congressman wink back.
The congressman smirked inwardly, being careful to remain straight-faced. It had seemed so easy to pass the bill. No one had even fully read it. The congressman's wandering eye passed over every person in the room. Politicians glanced at the smiling people, undoubtedly lobbyists. There were a couple angry men who seemed ready to storm out of the room. Then his eye fell on a familiar face. It looked at him and winked. It was the face of a particular lobbyist who had paid the congressman to sneak a particular paragraph 8, subsection 6 into the bill. He winked back. There was no way the bill could have failed with all the large lobbyists backing it. A great opportunity for him to absorb the last of his campaign money. Everyone in the room was backed by one of the smiling, winking gift givers. Every one of them had the same thoughts as he did. They weren't corrupt, in their minds. Just one more donation and they could fund their campaign. Then it would be over. No more accepting money. He would shed his skin and no longer be a snake. He would be reborn as the politician he had always wanted to be, free of influence.
The activist clenched his fist. It wasn't his first time in this situation. The room was stifling, the air made oppressive by the packed rows of politicians, other activists, and the so-called lobbyists. Each had played their part in the clockwork political dance that he had seen time and time again. All he wanted was to achieve his end goal, to help the land stay a little healthier, and he was losing. He couldn't match the lobbyists' funds, couldn't afford the strings that others used to guide the dance so expertly. The debate continued endlessly. Points were made, countered, and backed up. The bill he saw forming around him bore a little resemblance to its original self, with endless subsections shoveled on that had nothing to do with the topic at hand. That sickened him almost as much as anything else about the process. The smaller lobbyists were drawn to bills these days like scavengers. They would attach their own little loopholes to it via a small donation and wait for their heavyweight counterparts to drive the whole thing through. What did soup have to do with fracking? With every statement, his fist clenched harder than before, any harder and he might break. He could feel his heart beat heavily. It felt like a hammer was pounding in his head and chest. He glanced over and saw the lobbyist smile. He had lost. Again. The activist's palms were sweaty as he packed up his papers amidst all the emotions surging through him.
The congressman sat still, staring into the desk, doubt pulsing through his body. He knew what he just did was wrong. He knew that it went against everything that he stands for, or would try to stand for. If he had the courage, he just couldn't turn down the money. He knew that he needed every penny possible if he wanted to be reelected, but he was afraid. He was afraid that he would be consumed in the everlasting cycle. One bill after another is passed that shouldn't be. Just one more time, he kept telling himself. One more little paragraph of fine print and I'll finally put an end to it. He knows he won't. Snakes are still snakes when they shed their skin. Maybe there will be a time when he will stop. If he stopped accepting money, though, he knew he would be out of the office in a snap. How would he do any good then? Maybe he will eventually listen to the people who elected him rather than the money. But honesty didn't pay. He could see the disappointment in the activist's eyes. He could see the disappointment in his own eyes. Yet all he could see in the eyes of the lobbyist is delight. He asked himself how one could be so happy after doing something like that. Then he remembered all the money.
The lobbyist's smile faltered. He quickly plastered it back on. He must present an attitude of happiness to his masters. And why shouldn't he be happy? He had just achieved his goal after all. And yet, there was a tiny voice in the back of his mind. He had heard it before. Time and time again he had strangled it, hammered the same excuses into his mind. It's just economic advisory, he would tell himself. If we don't do this, our company will be left in the dust. It's just an expression of opinion. It's not bribery. He watched as the crowd stood and slowly disappeared. He sat, staring into oblivion, until he was alone. Finally, a janitor arrived to clear the filth brought in by the debaters. Could that janitor have done what the lobbyist had? Did he have the resources? Although each man had one vote in theory, did they have the same say in their government? Knowing the answer, the lobbyist stood at last and nodded to the cleaning man. He stepped slowly towards the door labeled Business Advisors, frowning.